Dig your hand in the land and listen to my story. Feel the cotton, wheat, and corn, the riches and the glory. Feel the sweat and strain of those who worked before me. Dig your hand down in the land.
Global agriculture has changed more in our lifetimes than in the previous 10,000 years. And with these changes, great conflicts have arisen. Nowhere is this conflict more poignant than in the story of seed. In this film, we'll see how the seed has changed in farming and in culture, from a sacred element and the giver of life to a powerful commodity used to monopolize global food. At the heart of the story of seed is a story of conflict between farming and business, between knowledge and control, and between truth and propaganda.
Once a company starts to see royalty collections from every seed, it pushes its genetically engineered crops to replace the native crops that farmers and peasants have grown over millennia.
We don't know what is in the ecosystem. We don't know what we have in it.
We begin the story of seed thousands of years ago, at a time when Earth was covered with disparate human communities, separated by land, seas, and deserts. A huge diversity of cultures, traditions, and languages evolved across our planet, adapting to many different climates and ecosystems. Over centuries, Earth was filled with ideas, cosmologies, routines and rituals, creating a vast bedrock of diversity. Today, there are still communities around the world who give us an insight into this ancestral past. For those who have studied these cultures, it's not the vast wealth of differences, but the similarities which are most illuminating.
All traditional cultures have been based on the recognition that the most important reason we are here on Earth is to play our role in maintaining life in its diversity. Because seed contains life, seed has been central to reproducing the culture of life. And if you look at rituals in India, in Africa, in Latin America, seed is at the center of it.
የአገሩ ድር ባህሩ ይሄ ነው
የምንገበው
ተመርቶ
ህይወት እስከሆነ
ተሰርቶ ስለሆነ የምንመገበው
ህይወት ነው ህይወት ነው
ካለና ወይ ምን አለና
mwanachi bebiwa naene rimuzalela yone koroni radova rajambeu musi muthu olova ramuzalela eno apa laetela one uitelo radele zaudi na neridove riwane zaudi musi richilima.
Ndiale gĩtũmi kĩngĩ nũntũ mbeũ nĩ icio ciumagaragia ciathi ya kũruta kĩgongwana nũntũ ndeni ya irĩ ũtikĩomba kũraga mbũri yonko tena ũtena irio tena mbeũ.
Germination and growth.
As our ancestors diversified, so did their seed and thus their farms. Long before Darwin's theory of evolution, men and women around the globe were learning about the basic building blocks of this process, that by selecting seeds with specific traits, they could ensure these were passed on to subsequent generations. At the centre of this understanding was the seed, which each year they would harvest afresh and could be stored, shared and crossed. Today we are left with the rich heritage of this past, in cropland and in the seed, stored in households, communities and farmland the world over.
The more we look at seed and biodiversity, the more we realize that the level of intelligence in the seed itself and in the breeding that farmers have done by working with the seed has given us not just the highest level of biodiversity, but the highest level of quality of food, the highest level of nutrition.
አንድ አይነት ቢሆን ከዘራ ጠፋ ያው የጠፋ ነገር ቅድም የተረጎምኩት ሊሆን ይችላል
Farmers breed for resilience, and therefore they breed for cooperative arrangements. They don't breed one crop. They know they must have many crops because the climate changes. They know they must have many crops because nutritional needs are diverse.
The production of food in indigenous traditions for most of human history has been to focus on advancing biological diversity.
At the turn of the 20th century, farming met for the first time with industry, and the farmyard embarked on a radical change. Mechanization pushed people off their land and into the cities, as traditional skills and labour were gradually replaced by all manner of modern machinery. But as Europe became embroiled in 2 world wars, the chemicals produced for these war efforts were about to change the face of agriculture. Locked in an arms race across Europe for explosives and chemical weapons, new chemicals were being produced in large quantities. Once peace returned, the excesses of industry manufacture found an unlikely path to profit. By making subtle chemical alterations, explosives and nerve agents were repackaged as fertilizers and pesticides, and chemical agronomy found its way into the farmyard. In the 1960s, the Green Revolution pulled chemical agronomy further into the mainstream as new seeds emerged which flourished under the high-dosage chemical regimes.
You're now bringing a lot of chemicals, and the need continues to grow. It's not static, and that need never ends.
ሁሉም የፍነሽ ማነሽ
እንዲሁ ነበር የሚዘሩት አሁን ግን
ዱሮ አሁን አይታወቅም ምግብ እንኳን ሁሉ አይነት ታልተዘጋጀ አንድ አይነት ምግብ ቢሰጥ እንትን አይም ሁሉም የፍነሽ ማነሽ
እንዲሁ ነበር የሚዘሩት አሁን ግን
ዱሮ አሁን አይታወቅም
fertilizer itina wapanda season A season ile nge wapanda buba yuma kendo utabandita na fertilizer.
With the loss of diversity, you lose your security, because that diversity is synonymous with security. It also means improved livelihood, it means improved nutrition, it means improved division of labor. All this would be lost to one crop.
As the farmyard industrialized, so big business emerged in agriculture. The seed, which had precluded large-scale investment and profiteering, was now opening up to business as hybrid seeds. Seeds which could not be saved from year to year helped corporations to privatize and control the profits from seed. Farmers would now need to buy new seed every season. the farmer's intimate knowledge of the land and the local farm ecosystem was being replaced by a globalized food system which favored chemical-dependent monocrops for the international market.
If it is said that English alone is a language and the thousands of languages people speak can be destroyed, we would talk about this as cultural imperialism. But there is a cultural imperialism in the field of biodiversity, in the field of seed, where the sophisticated varieties farmers have bred for high nutrition, for high taste, for high resilience to climate change, all of those varieties were declared primitive cultivars, land races, as if no intelligence had gone into the breeding, as if farmers have no brains and are stupid.
Nikyo ikurehe mbeca kuria iringi gutwara murimo no ti kuga ni kuria ro iria twariaga tene ri no njega gukira icio.
What do you think are the consequences of replacing many different varieties of crops, food crops actually, with a single crop that you cannot eat?
Mbeu isu inola withia wanacio undu umwe wa mbeu isu wanewa wabanda tili mbuye mwe lengi ndwa ileta umetungia mundani nundu watungia mundani anandesia.
I think the real concern is that there is an increasing corporate control of the seed chain, and increasingly that means that a very small number of people are having a massive influence over the way in which farmers are able to farm. Traditional practices of saving seed are now under threat, and what that does essentially is to put corporate profit ahead of the ability of farmers to feed themselves and their communities.
The pieces are linked together in two intertwined chains, forming a framework like a long spiral staircase. And in this molecule you have an essential quality of living matter, the ability to reproduce, to make copies of itself. And of all the molecules known to chemistry, only DNA and its relatives have this ability.
In 1953, Watson and Crick's discovery of the DNA double helix set the stage for one of science's most rapid advances. Genetic engineering, the science of moving genes between cells and organisms, soon became feasible. In agriculture, the possibilities seemed endless. Higher yields, greater resilience to droughts, better taste, or quicker maturation. But as the debates and discussions continued, the most significant role of this new technology was being played out not in the field, but in the courtroom.
The United States Constitution gives Congress the power to pass laws relating to patents that gives its owner certain rights to an invention. Those include the right to keep others from making, using, selling, or offering for sale the invention that is described in the patent.
Intellectual property laws had asserted that patents could be claimed on new and proven inventions. But in 1995, the World Trade Organization declared a radical change in global law. Under pressure from big business, they ruled that microorganisms already existing in nature could be patented. This extended to the seed, with genetic engineering allow corporations to tag and effectively barcode their investment. This breakthrough set the stage for the greatest twist in the history of seed.
As far as the seed is concerned, this leap in terms of property rights on life itself is the most serious threat to seeds of diversity, seeds of freedom that are in the hands of peasants.
In 1996, the first GM crop was brought to market in America, and with its arrival, a new age in agriculture was born. The new corn needed less weeding. The crops could be dusted with herbicide sprayed from aeroplanes, and whilst the weeds would perish, the crop would remain. This new corn crop contained a bacterial gene able to resist the toxic effects of glyphosate, the #1 selling chemical herbicide since 1970.
To put in a gene for herbicide resistance, you now have a monopoly on the chemical as well as on the seed that is married to the chemical.
They are chemical companies first, but they are seed companies second. That is if you can control the seed, you control the profit from growing food.
You create a monopoly when you're providing seeds which have been engineered to be resistant to the pesticides that are used on those seeds. The net effect of that is that we're seeing a vastly increased use of pesticides, which is one of the things that GM was supposed to be tackling.
I've seen long wish lists already 20 years back, selling tolerant seeds that would bring more yield, make drought resistance plants, or make them that you can grow them in water and resist diseases, etc., etc. None of them are there.
And I'll never forget when my wife and I left our door here, the front door, my wife turned around and said, "I hope to God I have a roof over my house, over my head tonight when I come home." That's how close we were to lose everything. We had put everything on the line. And I feel sorry for the farmers that didn't have that opportunity and have lost their farms, hundreds of them.
Canadian farmer Percy Schmeiser had been growing canola, saving and breeding the seed for 50 years. In 1998, his seed was found to contain the genetically altered bacterial gene resistant to the herbicide glyphosate.
Whether it's seeds blown in from your neighbor's field, pollen flow by the wind, or from bees, if that happens to you, you no longer own your seeds to plants. They immediately, under patent law, become the ownership of the corporation.
Percy was taken to the Canadian Federal Court for patent infringement. His defence, that the GM presence was accidental, was ruled by the court to be irrelevant, and he was found guilty in 2000.
Had no record of us ever obtaining their seeds or buying their seed, but they said because our neighbor grew it and contaminated us, we should not have been using their seed. We ought to should have known. Well, that's completely impossible. A canola seed, whether it's genetic altered or not, or organic, it looks identically the same unless you do DNA testing.
To date, over 140 US farmers have been taken to court for infringement of intellectual property over seeds. Thousands more have been investigated for so-called seed piracy.
What are we supposed to do with seeds? Seeds are supposed to be planted, multiplied, used, further adapted, etc., etc. That's exactly what's not allowed from the corporate mindset. The corporations sell us the seed or license us to use the seed in a specific way, in the way they are interested to use it. Full stop.
As patent laws have helped GM corporations to control the profits from seed, the new technology has proven uncontainable. In Mexico, entire corn-growing regions have been contaminated with GM. But the corporations have remained unaccountable on the issue of the spread of their technology.
Claro, desde siempre, desde hace 10,000 años, hay una relación muy cercana entre el maíz y las personas, entre el maíz y las comunidades, por lo menos aquí en México, que como ustedes saben, es centro de origen del maíz. Gracias, digamos, a la colaboración con las comunidades, descubrieron que había una contaminación transgénica en la Sierra Norte de Oaxaca, y a partir de eso lo difundieron al mundo.
Today, the GM market has spread out of North America and established itself in Argentina, Brazil, and now in India. And a familiar narrative has accompanied its journey, that the developing world cannot feed themselves, but that GM can turn around their beleaguered fortunes.
The poor farmers out there, they're not really efficient, and they have these old seeds, and they need to become more productive, and then the problems with hunger in the world are being solved. That message is not based on facts at all.
We are concerned about starving people in Africa. We are concerned about starving people in Asia. Let us be blunt about it. It is driven by the bottom line and the financial interests of those companies. It is not driven by any public spirited purpose.
By controlling the seed, you control the farmer. By controlling the farmer, you control the whole food system. And that's the legacy of genetics in farming.
So it's nothing to do with feeding the world, it's nothing to do with tackling some of these huge issues we're facing today. It's about control of the food sector, of the food economy.
It's because genetic engineering is being brought to us by the old agrochemical industry, which is interested in maintaining its agrochemical sales of herbicides and pesticides, while also establishing a monopoly control on the seed, that genetic engineering has gone in a totally wrong direction as far as agriculture is concerned.
Dig your hand in the land, touch the toil and sorrow in the soil, where the greenbacks never grow on what I borrowed. Dig down and tell me where's my seed for tomorrow. Dig your hand down in the land.
For the last 50 years, we have seen the identity of the farm, the farmer, and the seed change beyond all recognition. 90% of crop species have been pushed to extinction. Traditional farming methods have been devalued, and the future of food on our planet is being handed to a handful of corporations. In the end, it comes down to a simple choice: preserve diversity or destroy it.
We have to realize that diversity means survival. Diversity means being able to continue to produce, being able to continue to be a farmer. And without that, I think it's very important to realize that we're simply not being able, we will not be able to produce the food we need if we allow that this kind of diversity is further eroded.
Mbeu ina masiya ndo itwa ngauri mbeu vasava nayo vava na mbeu ntswa ito vatorenga vasapedzi ende ichikosina hela yavo yachikale avangarengi ngauri tshelede ino vadova vava nayo vone vadova kuna zvone yadova ikuita zvonevo zvimwe zvisailana na mbeu ndi ngazori kuri vathu vothe vashangu khavavuyelele kha zvahavo.
So it is a mathematical fact that we're going to hit an ecological wall, and it's going to be very, very unpleasant, and I think that will define the lives of our children today. And I don't think there's any avoiding that unless we radically change course. And I think the one lesson we all know from nature, from the most primary school biology, is that the best hedge we have against instability is a return to the human scale, is diversity.
The agrochemical and GM industry often tell us that small-scale agroecological farming is backward and inefficient, but the reality is that in spite of the unrelenting pressures they face, it is these farmers who feed 70% of the world's population. These systems use less land, less water, and fewer resources. They give us healthy, nutritional food and greater crop diversity. They protect soils, water, and ecosystems, and they are more resilient in the face of climate change. It is these systems that can show us the way forward for real food security.
Ecological systems, localized, biodiverse, are the ones that are really providing food, nourishment, health, and joy in eating for local communities. We need to decentralize our food system, and if we have to decentralize our food system, decentralized seed provisioning, seed sovereignty must become very much central to food sovereignty.
Farmers around the world are coming together and are working for food sovereignty, the right for people to produce their own cultural food.
Ikuima kwa mbeu isi yako kithio kitu ni wako imwika utanu nundu ndumwe siana sia kwa yesa kwitha nanza nundu ila na banda mwe ona kwimbua na kutembua nini ninguketha kana mubya.
I don't think the public should ever underestimate the potential power that they have should they choose to use it. I think if we have a much bigger public debate around the kinds of agriculture that we want and the kinds of practices and techniques of some of those big seed corporations, we might just get that same degree of outrage and hopefully a system in the long term that's better for people and the planet.